I'm glad to be here. Is that audible? Good. Okay. What I'm going to be trying to do is question which would be more efficient as an economic organization of society, whether it's organized into worker co-ops or organized into corporations that we have now. Usually when the word efficiency is used, they say capitalist efficiency. Efficient for what is what we have to ask. And what I'm looking for is what is most efficient for creating human kindness, stability, and mental health. If you look at mental health, you could look at it as a four-legged table, with each leg being important. And just, you need 4 legs for a stable table. I think you need 4 legs for a really stable, mentally stable life. The first leg would be intimate connection, somebody with whom you're very, very close. It could be a lover or a partner or a very close friend or a close family member or members. You could have that leg of crucial connection without any social connection, but it's an important part of the table. A second leg of the table of mental well-being is a friendly connection with a wider circle, whether it's neighbors or colleagues at work. And here too you can feel those connections without being connected to any wider social concern. The third leg is participation in a group where you share a common activity, and that could be a bowling league or a basketball league or a PTA or a political group such as the Bernie Sanders or Clinton or even Trump campaign or even the Klan, where you share a set of values and programs. And here you may really identify with a leader and consider anyone opposing him or her as an enemy who's morally wrong and inferior rather than merely different from you. That's a sort of Trump's idea, that anybody who isn't with him is actually an enemy, and anybody who is with him, no matter how questionable, is actually a friend. The fourth leg of the table of mental health and stability is a wider connection, where you feel connected to the world, you feel like you're a person among the people in the world, you have a level of wider concern, you think about yourself as part of humanity. And this perspective doesn't think of people with different views as evil, it doesn't see difference as hierarchy, but it sees difference as difference. That no matter who you are, you share a common humanity. Arlie Hochschild's new book, Strangers in Their Own Land, which is about fundamentalist adherence to Donald Trump, sees these people with enormous compassion, even though they're living in a total disaster created by chemical corporations, but they still hate the government. And she knows that they're people, and that is a perspective that's very important as the fourth leg of the table. We have to ask and answer the question of what are the effects of living in a society based on a cooperative economy versus a capitalist one. Under which economic organization would people be most connected to all 4 legs of a table of mental health? Which would be most efficient, I have water here, good, to accomplish that goal of healthy, mentally healthy citizens, connected in wider and wider circles? One in which decisions are made and income is distributed to the owner or a wealthy board of directors who represent the profits of the owner, or one in which people decide where to put the income they've generated and how to plan their lives, how to invest in their work and have the control over their own livelihoods. So they're representing themselves. Another way of phrasing the question of which is better is to look at a concept called ontological security. Ontological security is the right to be. It's the right to kind of say yes to your own life, where the society, starting with your parents on, says yes to you. You are important. You have a contribution. You are valued. You are here with us and are welcome. You can ask which system fosters that sense of ontological security, the sense that people are important, the sense that everyone has a role to play which ought to be respected. And you'd have to ask, if those are your values, if that's what's important to you, you'd have to ask which system is better. Now, from the time that we are born, humans, we are the most dependent mammals. We're dependent the longest time. And from the time that we're born, we need connection. Without care and affection, not only being fed or diapered, but being talked to and held, a child has no security and really no motivation to live. Kids who aren't nurtured that way, who aren't given affection and held and talked to and connected with, don't grow properly. They often never learn to walk, sometimes never to sit up, and they die. Those are called failure to thrives. And they found that out because at the end of World War II, there were thousands of orphans, if not hundreds of thousands, who were warehoused in big orphanages where someone stuck a bottle in their mouth and they were diapered, but they didn't grow, they didn't develop, and a lot of them just died. They were called failures to thrive. And the same thing happened in Ceausescu's Romania, because he didn't believe that anyone would ever be allowed to have an abortion, so people had their babies and gave them up to the state that provided that same kind of indifferent care with the same results of thousands of children failing to thrive. So that we have to understand that we need connection from birth on. We are people who need connection, because all people need connection. The opposite of ontological security, the right to be and feel okay, is chaotic nonentity, where you just kind of dissolve, you don't feel any connection with anyone, you feel lost, you feel desperate. And I think the United States, among all the 24 wealthy countries in the world, suffers most from this ailment. I think one of the most ultimate symptoms of chaotic nonentity, sorry for that, is random shootings. You have to be completely disconnected to go into a public place and pick people off with no thought for them and no care about them. The United States is the overwhelming leader in mass shootings. In the month of September, where I've been counting, there have been 40 mass shootings. That means shooting at 4 or more people who one doesn't even know. And 204 people have been wounded or killed in these shootings. Of course, that's a lot more than Al-Qaeda, but the government is not putting much attention on it, except headlines and then a repetition. No other wealthy nation came even close. While we have had 40 mass shootings in the last month, 1 month, among the other wealthy countries, for example, England, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Slovenia, and Norway have had 1 mass shooting in the last 4 years. Denmark, Switzerland, and Finland has had 2 in the last 4 years. Germany has had 3 in the last 4 years. We are the world leaders in this respect. so that more than one a day, something's really wrong. So when we look at it, we think, why? First place, all the people who have done these mass shootings are men. All of them have either lost a job, which meant a connection with other people, or lost a relationship very recently. Because for a lot of men who are brought up with shame about their needs for other people, they put all their need into their sex life, because sex is, you're allowed to need, men are allowed to need sex within the male stereotype. And so when your two forms of identification, your job and your woman, walk out, you can dissolve. Another reason that we are the ultimate world leaders is that we do not do anything to help, not anything, we do the least to help parents with vulnerable children, to help them connect, to help them have time to bond, to help them make the kind of close connections that every child needs. For example, we have no paid maternity leave. We are one of 4 nations that have no paid maternity or paternity leave. And the other 3 nations are Somalia, Swaziland, and Papua New Guinea. So they're nowhere in our league of wealth or sophistication. We also don't have any paid vacations. We have the least paid vacation, which is a time when people can bond, can take time with their children, can relax, can have the conversations that allow a relationship to exist. And we also are alone among the advanced, wealthier nations, the 24, in that we don't have quality public health care available. So people don't have that sense of support by the system. According to the UN statistics in their 2015 report on children, the quality of child well-being in the United States is the lowest of all 24 wealthier nations of the world. We have the worst child poverty, and child poverty means you don't have, 1 in 5 don't have enough to eat. They call it food scarcity. It's hunger. The poorest Americans are children under 5. It means you're deprived. It means you don't get what you need, and you don't know why. And it's because kids are egocentric, they think it's because they're just not good enough. Also, parents of young children, since they're not supportive, are alone, and they have so little help and so many pressures and frustrations that is it a wonder that we also are the leaders of the wealthy industrialized world in child death and child abuse. For every spike in the unemployment, there's an equivalent spike in the number of children with shaken baby syndrome in the emergency rooms of America. That means that a frustrated parent is shaking the kid so hard that their brains turn to jelly, and they could get away with just being blind, or they could be killed. So we have, nothing predicts child abuse better than poverty and disconnection from basic support. So children are at a huge disadvantage in our capitalism. Of course, it's not just money, it's the social connection that money can buy. It's the stability money can buy. Marriage stability is the highest. In fact, there's a quantum leap. People with money have much more marital stability than people without money, because people with marital stability are the ones who can get takeout food after a long day. They can afford nannies. If things get rough, they can go to a couples counselor. They can go to their personal counselor. They can have the kid go to camp in the summer. There's a total difference in the kind of pressure on a parent who has money or who doesn't. So you think, okay, how does that tie in with what kind of system we live in? Well, without the security of somebody saying yes to your existence and treating you like a special existence, a special addition to the world, you are much more subjected to trauma. You're much more subjected to rage, to violence, to frustration. And there's a fellow named Marty Smith who has developed this magnificently. What happens with trauma is that when a child is traumatized, when a child is hit, when a child is watching their parents in a physical fight, when a child is lying there alone because their single mother went out because she needed a break and they cry and there's nobody there, there's a natural thing that happens. The brain releases a cocktail of uppers, downers, and painkillers, which help the child leave the premises and dissociate and not know what's happening. The similar phenomenon physically is when you're in shock because you've been badly hurt. Your body goes into a coma and it closes the system down in order to save the system of the body. Well, the mind does the same thing. You can't afford, if you're a child, to understand that your sole caregivers who ensure your survival are out of control and endangering your survival. Kids can't deal with that. They go offline. The natural cocktail that is released in trauma floods them, and they are no longer there. Later on, people who really aren't there because they've had to hide from themselves and the truth of what they went through keeps coming up, but they keep putting it down, kind of like going 90 miles an hour up the spinal cord with the brakes on, because I can't bear to realize that, have to keep down their realizations. They have to do something so they don't have to know what's going on. This is only exaggerated and made worse by the fact that the society doesn't care either. And you have to face that the opportunities that would make you feel hopeful and cared for aren't there socially either. And neither are the after-school programs and the encouraging teachers and the whole raft of things that a child needs. And that's probably why the United States has a huge opium addiction problem. Opioids are huge everywhere. People need to keep them, people when they've had trauma need to enhance the ability to get offline by finding a drug that helps with that. And opium and opioids and heroin is the most popular drug that does take you out of that idea that you are alone, that you are abandoned, and keeps the biochemical cocktail that your brain is trying to make going. We're 5% of the world's population in the US. We consume 80% of the world's opioids, heroin and, other offline drugs, painkillers, and so on. ODs are now, that's overdoses, are the most frequent cause of accidental death, more than car accidents or anything else. That's huge. That's a huge problem. We are the least socially connected people of all the Western industrialized nations. We are the most lonely. 1 in 4 people in the United States has no one to talk to, even in the time of a most acute emotional emergency. And the people who are either opium addicts, heroin addicts, don't have anyone to talk to. They need to go away. In addition, the United States, which used to be a place of connection and joining, people are disconnected more than in any other of the wealthier nations. The United States has fewer people connected in any way to any organization, whether it's a bowling league, a PTA, a political campaign, a social issue, than were in bowling leagues alone in 1970. That's a very lonely, disconnected people watching their televisions and eating Cheetos and Fritos and Doritos advertised on television. So that we are the loneliest people. And we are lonely in part because we're abandoned by our society that largely doesn't care about us, doesn't give us jobs, it doesn't give us hope, it doesn't give us basic support with our children. If you're a single mother in Sweden, you make 98% of what a man makes and you get priority in housing after school. Even in France, which is a very mixed country, unlike Sweden, you have 100% of 3-year-olds in child care center, which is free, and pre-3-year-old child care is $1 an hour with a master's degree teacher and an associate's degree teacher and a nurse available, and a sick room if you have to go to work and your kid is sick, so they're not left alone when they're sick. That gives people a sense of being okay, ontologically secure, connected with each other, with time to connect and vacation time to connect. By the way, France gives guaranteed 5-week paid vacation to every employed person. That's one of your rights, 5 weeks of paid vacation. You don't have the supports. You don't have the legs, all the legs of your mental table, the personal connection, the group connections, the connections with the wider world are shaking. Capitalism drives us to mental illness. If you go to a place, the biggest place of co-ops in the world is a place called Mondragon. It's in Spain, and it's a city of communes, well, actually not really communes, but collective ownership and democracy at work, where workers make the decision in cooperatives. It has 103,000 people. If there's no cops around, it's really amazing. And it's 104,000, organized. And the way they decide what to do with their work is they decide it collectively. So I went to see a co-op, which is a very big co-op that makes washing machines and dishwashers and so on, and used to sell them to the condos in Spain and to new buildings in Spain. Well, when Spain went into their recession and fewer people were buying these things, they had to cut back. And the way they decided to cut back is they met with all the workers in this factory, which were a lot of workers, and they decided they would work 1 day less a week. And we talked to some of the people there, and they said, well, it would have been better to get the income, but it was our decision. We had to do it together. And if you go to that huge factory, there's a buzzer that rings every 2 hours because nobody should do repetitive work, the same repetitive work continuously. So you switch to a different job after 2 hours. And in the cafeterias, these issues are discussed. And the meetings where you decide what to do are compulsory. They're part of your work and they're on work time, because everyone should have to decide what's happening to them. I asked them about addiction. They said it's not a problem. If somebody is drunk at work, other workers talk to that worker. If that doesn't work, they're sent to rehab, and they come back, and they're in a community, and they stop. They don't need to be offline. They have a sense of social support. And even if their personal relationship at the moment isn't going well, they feel supported on so many different sides that they can sustain themselves. So if we are looking for what is the most efficient system that will give people a sense of being welcome, ontological security, connection, mental stability, and happiness, we would have to look at cooperatives as the way to go, rather than a society built on accumulating more and more for the people at the top in utter disregard for what it takes from everybody else. I hope that people will make comments or ask questions afterwards in the question time. Thanks. That's the end.